So we won't walk on, but if afterwards, if you go up there, I've got little kind of separate places for different chickens. Just right here on this north side is, it used to be a rolling chicken coop that you could put out like on the lawn or in a field or whatever. And we used it like that for a while and then decided we didn't like all the chicken poop on our lawn, even though it would be good fertilizer. So ended up just leaving it over there. So that's where I like put chicks. When we get new chicks, I put them in that little guy, put a heat lamp in with them. They hang out in there, eventually open a little door that they can get down in the bottom and move around in there. Now I've got another place up that I can separate with the fencing to be for, because they get a little bigger, they go over there. Or a few months ago, we did meat chickens, so we put them in there. And then the main coop here. It's kind of three different areas that chickens can be as I move them around. This is all, so what I started with the last group, this is all homemade from used stuff here. Everything you see came off of KSL. Michelle would find it somewhere and say, hey, over in Orem is this thing. Go buy it. You know, this is like 6 years ago or whatever. So I went and bought this part of the coop and it had that part on. And then up in West Jordan was this guy. So we went and got it on a trailer and brought it in, and I figured out how to maneuver it in with this. And then there was another coop, I think, came from Orem also. So we started with nothing here and then bought it all. So that's a good way to get started rather than something fancy from IFA or wherever. So we just kind of put them all together. And then for chickens, they're super easy. We made them a lot more complicated the first year or so than, because, you know, you're new at it. I grew up on a farm. My grandma and grandpa had chickens. I remember going and in their coop and getting chickens and all. And that's why I can do fences and put this all together and stuff. I'm kind of used to doing that. But they're really easy. We were worried about heat in the first winter in there a little bit. And especially around here, you don't have to be worried about it. I've read that they can be like 15 below before it starts freezing their feet or anything. So in our area, they're totally fine. You don't need to do supplemental heat. You want to make sure you've got airflow. I've got some vents and openings. Like, don't close. That's the other thing. You start thinking we should close it off and make it really tight, but then their poop and ammonia and stuff is a lot worse than they need the airflow. Otherwise, it gets really humid and gross. So airflow is great. Cold, they're fine. Have a place that they can nest and lay eggs and water and food and hopefully a place to roam around, and that's pretty much all they need. So they're really pretty simple, other than the intensity, build a place. And I mean, ours is pretty intense because it's big, and if you wander around, you can see how, you know, they run up the side and everything. Tell you a couple other things, then just ask me questions. So we do scratch. For this many, we probably ought to do more, but just something like this size, we just throw out on the ground and let them kick it around and pick it up. And it's just a normal scratch mix. I get the food for the last year, so I've been getting it from Leland Mills down in Spanish Fork. So I get their scratch, black oiled sunflower seeds, and oats. Our neighbor does chickens, and she was telling me of all the reasons why you have black oiled sunflower seeds. And I don't really know why they are, but we stick them in there. And I think they do help them to lay in the winter without needing the supplemental light too, I've read. So we're trying it. We haven't been too far into that, but I basically mix 80% scratch, 10% sunflower seeds, 10% oats. We throw it out on the ground. Then we do lots of garden stuff in the summer. You can see some of it out there. And I also do fodder, basically sprouting oats, or not oats, sprouting barley and wheat. So we just, this is 5 days old. So I just sprout this up and then tear it apart and throw it out there too for them to ask Michelle about all the advantages of sprouted grains and all that. But I just grow it and then throw it to them. I'll do this more in the winter. We've kind of been doing it, even if we haven't really needed to because we have so many greens we're throwing in, but wintertime, this will be good for them. Yes. Doing what? Laying eggs. Problem with that? Oh, just not laying enough. I've done supplemental light every year, so I'll usually have it turn on so that they have like 14 hours of light every day. My aunt grandma. Mm-hmm. So the only heat they had was hot stove. Chickens had taped up a little bit on the far corner, and when it was too cold and they wouldn't lay, she'd take a cookie sheet that had sides and lay out some bread, heat up a little bit of milk, and get that a little damp on there, and they'd always lay. Yeah, I've heard of that kind of thing. I've heard the black-balled sunflower seeds really help. That's the other thing. We're always in process of trying stuff. So I've done light for a lot of years. It seemed to help. They definitely slow down in the winter, but then they'll still lay with some light. It's just light bulbs inside of the coops. Have a light bulb hanging up there, and I have a little timer that flips it on and off. So, what's that? I've actually gone to LED. I had incandescents for the first couple of years, but just because that's all I have is really LED lights, so that's what I put out there now, and they last longer too. Yes.
Hey, you don't have the specifics, but are you guys profitable on what you pay to feed the chickens versus the equivalent?
Yeah, no idea. we don't like sell the eggs, whatever, so we're probably not, just because I mean, we have lots of chickens right now. We had some meat ones that were supposed to turn into meat that we didn't do, and so they're in there now. We usually have around 20 or so chickens, and we'll get 12 or 14 eggs a day in the summer, and it'll drop to 8 or 7 or 8 in the winter. But we do it because we can throw all the greens in, we can eat the eggs. This is our whole composting place. Ludi, no roosters. You would hear them down at your house if we had roosters, and so would the cells. So
I wonder.
yeah,
So
they're not fertilized. No, so if we get like 8 chicks, we might end up with 1 rooster, and you'll hear them start croaking, and then they turn into a rooster, and then we ship them off because they're too noisy, especially for close neighbors. So that's food. This is our feeder. So I'll tell you 2 things that I love. Here's this one coming to maybe get out. So this feeder is the best thing ever, because often you have the feeders that just sit on the ground, and I haven't liked mash in the past because it goes all over the ground. But this is a guy a couple down had something like this. It's like a 3-inch 90 PVC that I put all around this. He did it in a big box, but then you couldn't get to the food in the middle. But they go and they stick their head in that and eat it, and none of the mash ends up out on the ground. They have to eat everything that's in there, which is awesome. And then I don't know if you heard right as you came up, we also had a whole bunch of sparrows, and they still fly around some. They would eat the food more than the chicken. And I tried hanging flashy things and buying some deal off the internet that hung off over there that made hawk sounds or something, and they could have cared less about all that. They just went right by it and ate all the food. But since I went to this, the sparrows are no more. They come and they play in the water and eat on the stuff on the ground. But I think they're scared to go in that because it's got them trapped if they were to go into that 90. So they don't go in and eat any of the food anymore. So this is the layer mash from Leland Mills, but the same proportions: 80% layer mash, 10% black-balled sunflower, and 10% oats. And it's like the best thing ever. And it's just homemade. I cut holes in it and screwed and caulked that guy into place, those guys into place around it. The chickens get in and eat it fine, and the other birds don't, and they don't make a mess of it. So I love that. Ask me anything about that. Oh, they see all the sparrows coming over, and now where they went. And then the hanging water is the other one that I would tell you. If you come over here, there's this blue hanging water. If it's really hot, 100 degrees, I'll sometimes put a groundwater out for them to supplement this. That blue water right there is the best thing ever too, because those of you that have or have had chickens, you know that if you have a water on the ground, it gets nasty. They poop in it and they kick stuff in it, and you have to clean it like every day. That thing is just a little bucket, and it's got these little nipples on the end of it that if you watch them, they might come over and do it. They just go and peck at the little metal thing, and water drops come out, and that's how they get their water. Yeah, that's true. And in the winter, I have a extension cord over here with a timer and stuff for the light, but I also have a knot timer for that. So I just get a livestock water. It's just a little circle thing that I just hang, and if the water gets close to freezing, that comes on and keeps it from freezing. But those are the 2 things I love: that kind of feeder and that hanging water. We throw them lots of greens. I throw them the fodder, and they're really pretty easy. They just wander around and do their thing, and they're pretty hilarious sometimes too. You sit out here and watch them do their thing.
Is that what you feed them in the winter?
All the time.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. And the other stuff too.
So the scratch we just throw out on the ground for them to go and pick at and eat. and then the food is just in there, and that's the Mills 24% layer or maybe 21% layer mash. Yeah, I have a lid that I put on it. Yeah, it's right up here. There's a little concrete thing. And it's kind of underneath another little perch that I have for them, so it keeps it from getting wet. Works great.
How full?
Well, in times past, I filled it all the way up, and then one day it started coming out the side right here. So I tend to keep it only about half full, just so it doesn't blow out the stuff.
They peck.
Yeah, they peck at it, and I'll usually come and shake it every day just to kind of filter down, because they like the north side. I think especially the new chicks that are scared of everybody else, they'll go eat real quick around there. So if I take the lid off, I can see that there's kind of a hole in the food down to that one. So I'll just shake it.
How big?
Once they're just a few weeks old and big enough to get at it, they can get into that. For the chicks though, I still have a ground feeder and water for food. Not till they're bigger do I start giving them the water hanging. Well, because we have so dang many of them, like this thing half full and lasts maybe a week or a little more than that, probably maybe a couple of weeks.
Really simplified.
Yeah, that's why I say it's really easy. You don't need to get too intense with it. Just give them food and water and scratch. And I have a little place up in there where I throw grit, and you can just buy grit on Amazon, and oyster shells for calcium. So I'll throw a little bit of that in occasionally, but really they're pretty easy. Water, food, a little bit of shelter, place to lay eggs, and grit and oyster shell stuff. And then all the garden stuff we can throw into them. So
after they are done, like 3-4 years.
now we typically, there's a couple of them if you see are getting pretty mangy. Like those are the ones that are the golden sex links. That was the other thing I was going to tell you. The kinds we like. Golden sex links are great, or I think there's black sex links. They're called also, but they wear themselves out in a hurry. They lay really big eggs, and they lay a lot of them, but they only last a couple of years. I really like, my two favorite kind are Rhode Island Red and Black Australorp. Those two, they don't get broody. We have cool green eggs. I should have an egg out here to show you. Yeah, and those are the other kind, actually. Americanas, or however you say it, yeah. I've seen it Americana or Araucana. So black Australorps and Rhode Island Reds. So they're called the Easter egg chicken, whatever. They lay kind of bluish eggs. The other ones lay brown. And then we've had this black one that lays green eggs. It's called a, I can't remember what kind, but they are always broody. They drive, my family laughs at me. Broody means they go in and just sit on the eggs, so they don't lay, and they just sit on the other legs and they're in the way. So I'll go grab them and cuss them and tell them quit being broody and throw them in here to try to get them to stop, but they're in there all the time. Olive eggers. They're called olive eggers. The eggs are awesome, but the chickens are annoying. So don't olive eggers unless you really like green eggs and broody chicken. And there's one bragging about having laid an egg or mad at us for being here talking. Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah, when I cleaned this out a while ago, I freaked one of them out. She started squawking like that. Any other questions before we switch places? Wander around and look at it either now or later, but yes.
I've been told that if you pick up a chick and its legs go out like that, it's a rooster. As they hang down, it's a hen.
We just buy them from IFA or Cal Ranch and wait to see if they get big, thick, whatever you call all that stuff, combs and stuff, and then eventually you hear them start going, "Rah, rah," and then a few days later it'll start turning into a real crow, and then I'm like, okay. Yeah, they do. They have whatever that was. So anyway, that's what we're doing with chickens. They're great, they're easy, but it is work. So about once a month I try to get it from there over to here. I haven't done anything in here this year. I really need to, I need to get this pulled out. Whoop, watch out for the water. And I need to get this cleaned out and over here before winter time. But not that often. I just like to keep nesting areas clean. But here they kick around and eat it and take care of it. So do I?
Can you compost?
Yeah. That's why I like to move from here to here to here, because by the time I get it out there, they've really beat it up and it's too much compost, and then I'll take it out onto the garden. But if I just tried to take it out of here, then you've got pieces of bigger poop and bigger pieces of the greens that we've thrown in and everything. In the beds, out around the trees.
Winter.
Yeah.
So
Usually in the fall, I like
it's
to.
not.
No, and that's why I was saying if I have it get mixed in there and then mixed out here, and they'll take it from there and throw it in the pile. By the time it's gone from there to here, it's usually calmed down and not too hot.